Hello, shalom, and welcome to another episode of Community Relations Corner, where we discuss issues of concern to New York's Jewish community with our friends and partners all over the city and metropolitan area. I'm your host, Michael Miller, the Executive Vice President and CEO of the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York of JCRC-NY. And on each episode of Community Relations Corner, we're joined by guests representing the political, religious, economic, and diverse community leadership in New York, many of whom I've had the honor and pleasure of getting to know over the course of my lengthy tenure here at JCRC-NY. Together, we'll discuss current events impacting the New York Jewish community and its neighbors, as well as the state of our city, the state of our state, the state of the nation, and at times the state of the world. Today, we are joined by two longstanding friends. First, by Daisy Khan, the founder and executive director of the Women's Islamic Initiative for Spirituality and Equality, known by its acronym WISE, W-I-S-E. And Mohammed Razvi, executive director of the Coalition of People's Organizations, known by its acronym COPO, C-O-P-O. For a special Ramadan edition of Community Relations Corner. Welcome, Daisy and Mohammed.
Hello. Thank you for inviting
us. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, I guess we could say, for those who speak that
language. Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam, yes.
Okay, so I really think the first thing that we should do, since a good portion of our audience is made up of members of the Jewish faith, is to ask you a question about Ramadan, about what Ramadan is, what it means to you, and how do you mark it? How do you, celebrate it? So I'm going to turn to ladies first. So I'm going to turn to Daisy to begin the conversation. Daisy?
Thank you so much. Well, in this blessed month, this blessed month is not defined by a season of the year or winter or summer. It actually rotates throughout the seasons. And I know many people get very confused because they thought once Ramadan was in December and they thought, oh, Muslim holiday and Jewish holiday and Hanukkah and Ramadan. And then all of a sudden here we are in April and Ramadan is here again. So it's partly defined by fasting. In this month is very unique because Mohammed, who was simply a citizen of Mecca, experienced Laylatul Qadr, which is the night of power, when he was transformed into a prophet, a messenger of God, because he was given the first revelation of the Quran by Angel Gabriel. So that's what defines this month primarily, that the Quran actually descended down to Arabia, through Angel Gabriel to Prophet Muhammad. So for Muslims, it is a month of spiritual heightening of our own consciousness, where we seek to also taste this Laylatul Qadr in our own lives, the night of power, a moment of contact between us and God. So that's why we have enormous amount of prayers that we do. We fast. The fast is a complete fast. Everything from drink to it's sort of like the Jewish fast. It's absolute abstaining from everything. And it starts from dawn and goes all the way into sunset. So it's day-long fast and lasts up to 30 days. And this month, we also make some very conscious choices about the actions that we take. The Prophet said in one of his hadith, in one of his sayings, that this month, the gates of heaven are open wide and those of the hells are chained. So in this month, God forgives more souls and makes this easier for us to receive his mercy. So this is a month of atonement, seeking forgiveness from God for the mistakes that we have made. And basically, in American vernacular, it's a month to reboot ourselves spiritually and become as angel-like as we possibly can, so that the next 11 months we can, be an evolved human being. This is the purpose of it.
Well, thank you very much for that very comprehensive response, Daisy. And for many of our listeners, before I turn to Mohammed, for many of our viewers who are members of the Jewish faith, our calendar is a lunar calendar, the Jewish calendar, and similarly, the Islamic calendar, the Muslim calendar is a lunar calendar, but in the Jewish calendar, there is a corrective month that's added about every 2+ years to keep our Jewish festivals that are agriculturally oriented in their proper season. And in the lunar calendar, there isn't a corrective day or month. In the secular calendar, we have one day, the February 29th, but so there's no correction within the Islamic calendar. So that's one of the reasons why the month of Ramadan keeps on moving back pretty much 1 month or 3 weeks every year. So Mohammed, I wanted to ask you a question. Is there a special liturgy? Is there a special prayer book just for Ramadan? We in the Jewish community have prayer books for daily prayer, prayer book for Shabbat, for Saturday prayer, a prayer book for the holiday prayer as well. Is there a prayer book to begin with, let alone a special prayer book just for Ramadan? And again, I'd love for you to add to Daisy's explanation about what Ramadan means to you.
Well, thank you, Michael. And I'm so fortunate that we have such friends like you and JCRC and your whole team. First of all, to work together throughout all the community members, throughout all the community leaders. And coming back, as Daisy has really explained the month of Ramadan, the most important thing is, it is a time that we try to celebrate, break fast together with our families and with our friends. Pretty much in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, in Queens, in Staten Island, and also in the Bronx, we started the iftar dinners throughout the borough president's offices, which actually now it's on hold because of the coronavirus. But it was such a huge celebration to break bread together, and that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we did. And in this special month, it's about getting to know your neighbor. Yes, repenting of all the bad things that you might have done. Request the Lord to forgive you, but spending time with your friends and also your neighbors and your family. At this moment, I'm actually in Pakistan. I'm celebrating Ramadan with my family, which I have. Yeah, I am. And that's why there's a time delay. There's a time delay. And I actually just opened my fast, and I'm just like a little bit, if you see me a little doze off, that's because the food is just hitting me. But most importantly, I'm here. This is the first time for I don't know how many. It's got to be over 10 years that I got a chance to visit Pakistan and break bread together with my distant relatives, my cousins, my uncles, my aunts, and and believe it or not, it is due to coronavirus, because there's not much I could have done in New York, because we would be busy having all these iftar dinners throughout the friends and families and all the boroughs. So that's where it's for me at the moment. Honestly, it is, and it is the most, it's the most precious thing, because when you sit at the table and you break bread together, then you could discuss other issues and things that happen within, whether it's the family, whether it's with, neighbors having issues, whether anything. All these things that are happening, even with the hate crimes, break bread together, and we sit down and I talk to the kids. I say, my God, what's happening over there? What's happening over there? You get a chance to talk to each other and really try to understand that life is so it's so precious, and all these things that are happening. And regarding with your other question, where basically the Quran is our guidance, and basically all the prayers are in there. However, some of our imams, imams and clergy members, they do take out some of the, you could say I have to say it's called surahs, and it's they take them out and they put it into a small little books, so that people can, it's easier for them not to go through the whole Quran. But every day, all of my family members, including myself, we try to read one. It's called one para. So one whole chapter. It's like 30 chapters in the Quran. So try to finish that 30 chapters of reading it every night for 30 days. So we do that.
Very, very interesting. I think, well, first of all, live from Community Relations Corner out of Pakistan, it's really a quite a phenomenon for us on this webcast. But what does iftar actually mean? What is the word?
It literally just means break the fast,
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So it's like
breaking bread together.
yeah, break the fast. Yeah. So
And you start the iftar, if I'm not mistaken, with eating dates. Am I correct?
yes, that's the prophetic way. So usually people break the fast with dates, and they're also very energizing. So it's not just
Right.
they have a lot of really good nutritional value, and usually water. And depending on the culture that people come from, there are all varieties of things that people eat. There's some people have soup in Morocco, harissa, and other people break it with samosas and chaat, and it all depends on the culture, but usually the tradition is dates and water is what people start with.
But so let me
Yeah,
ask.
and don't forget the hummus also. Hummus in Israel.
Well, let me ask Mohammed, since you're in your homeland, you're in Pakistan. What is a traditional iftar dinner for the Razvi family in your hometown?
So it starts off with the dates. Starts with a mix of fruits. You have it's called fruit chart. So it's like cut up fruit, and then there is some korda and samosa, as Daisy Khan has mentioned. And then you have a huge meal. Basically, today they had it's basically beef with how can I say, beef with potatoes, and then it has a special the naan bread. Remember the pita bread, or the big, I would say naan bread, the ones I remember the falafels that I used to have in Israel. So they have those types of breads over here. It's very similar, and it was just that's what it is. You just sit down and you just enjoy, and it was wonderful. Just being sitting here and enjoying that with the family.
That's really very, very special. And I'm so glad that we have this opportunity to communicate with you while you're with your family and in Pakistan. Okay, I now want to turn to Daisy and just ask a bit more about your personal background. Daisy, you've really become a powerhouse in the Muslim community. You've written a book entitled Born with Wings, The Spiritual Journey of a Modern Muslim Woman. You're working on a second book, Wise Up, and you founded WISE, the Women's Islamic Initiative for Spirituality and Equality, among other things. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal background, your books, and what brought you to your work and the important initiatives at WISE?
Yeah, well, I was born in Kashmir, and it's been in the news lately, but it's one of those very beautiful, picturesque places in the world. And but my life was pretty much informed at an early age, because although I was born a Muslim in a Muslim household, I was sent to Catholic missionary school, and my teachers were Hindu. I climbed mountains with Sikh girls, bought freshwater pearls from Buddhists, and we were always told that we were from the lost 10 tribe of Israel. So, so although I didn't know Jewish people, I got to meet all the Jews in the world that I could think of in one fell swoop when I fell into Jericho, Long Island, and all my neighbors were Jewish. I was in literally 99% Jewish neighborhood, went to a Jewish school. So by the age of 16, I had pretty much experienced all world religions and had direct interaction with people of those religions. So that's what informs my work. And that's why I'm so passionate about bringing people together, creating harmony amongst all of our people, because I see religion as one, because God is one. We can call it by many names. There's only one creator. And we are being tested by this diversity, how well we're going to do. And God has, as Mo mentioned, we read these 30 sections of the book of the Quran so we can complete the Quran in this month. And I'm reading so many references to the Jews and the Christians and believers, and that we are one religion, and then you divide yourselves amongst yourself, each one asserting his own superiority. This is the perennial complaint of God. I created you. I gave you the book. I told you, I'm your Lord. And so why do you split amongst yourselves? So I see religions as, as one, as God's religion. And then of course, each of us has our own path, our own way that we reach God. So this is what informs my work, Michael. I'm inspired by that.
Mhm.
And I'm always trying to do that course correction where I see things not going the right way. So whether it's women's rights or whether it's extremism, you mentioned Wise Up. So in 2017, I published a book called Wise Up, Knowledge and Extremism, because I was fed up. I was fed up of extremism, of ISIS and Al Qaeda, and how they had stripped my religion of all of its humanity. And I, published that book. It took years to publish it. It was a lot of research. And then recently, with the rise of, white supremacy in this country, I said, wait, I'm not going to let them go, because that's not fair. Because, I already did a book on the extremists in my community. Why don't I look at extremists that are really affecting all of us now? Whether it's Jews, it's Muslims, it's immigrants, it's Blacks, it's Asians, we're all under attack by this one, group. But I also didn't want to make the same mistake that people made with Islam, that it's all monolith. They're only one type. So there's no monolith of white supremacy. It's not a monolith. There are groups and individuals and strains and strands. So that book is coming out this year. And so this is why I do this, is so that I can educate the public, create nuance in the community and about this topic. And so we can be well-informed citizens and we can get empowered with the knowledge. And I try to fill that knowledge gap where it exists. So I can speak about other things later on. I have more chance to say something.
Sure, I'm sure we'll find that opportunity, but thank you for that. I want to turn over to Mohammed. Yes, we all know him by his nickname Mo, but for this purpose, I am going to refer to him as Mohammed during the month of Ramadan. And you also have an incredibly impressive career, spanning from being a businessman to a community organizer. So can you just share with us a little bit about your personal background and what we heard about what inspires Daisy. So what inspires you, Mohammed, and how COPO, your organization, came into being, and what does it do? And one other piece, which we'll get to in a moment. Actually, I'm going to hold off that other piece we'll get to in a moment. So let's deal with this first. So a little bit about your background in COPO.
So I'm going to say it the best way as I can. The most important thing is, because you're asking the question, I'm actually back in Pakistan. So I remember when I was 5 years old, going to a mosque, there was a bomb. There was a bomb inside the mosque. And it was by these individuals who called themselves ISIS at that time, individuals who actually attacked on 9/11. And I remember when 9/11 happened, I was talking to my mom and I'm like, what's going on? What is this? And my mom told me, that's what we were running from. And I can't believe it that they came into America, those people, and attacked us. So it brings me back and back all the time that, wow, I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are, a person who is full of hate, they hate everyone and they're going to go after everyone. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Muslim, you're a Jew, or you're Christian, it doesn't matter. What going is, because at that moment, my own neighbors, I was running multiple businesses and I'm living the American dream. I mean, my kids are going to private school. I have a nice car. I have a nice paycheck. And all of a sudden, my next door neighbors who know me for almost 20 something years, they're like, are your people doing this? How could your people do? How could you do this? And the blame. And then what was even worse was how my kids, who are American as they can be, I mean, maybe I'm a first generation, but they are like second and third generation, and they are Americans, and they were being attacked. My little daughter, my daughter with a scarf, she was pushed down the steps and she was cursed at. And the teacher thought it's okay, as if I was like, how could that be okay? My daughters, they just started changing their way of attire. And I was so worried. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to do something. And then as I found out, more community members were being rounded up, which was the most devastating thing. I mean, that little place where I actually have my office and my businesses I used to have, little Pakistan, all of a sudden became, it was empty. Everybody started fleeing. They started running away. They were afraid because it didn't make a difference if your name was Mohammed Khan or Mohammed A. Khan. You were on a list and the law enforcement was just coming to round up people. And after I started helping them and I seen the change, and most importantly, Michael, it is honestly, every time I think about this, when I was working with the Jewish community, when he got in touch with Bob Kaplan and JCRC, I realized there's more to this. I mean, what was supposed to be a temporary organization turned into permanent. And what I just started to learn about because of you guys and because of the Jewish community and actually the Christian community, I started to understand we have to work together. And that's what keeps me going. I mean, I thought it'll be a few months, but now it's been over 18 years.
18 years.
And I'm still continuing. 18 years. It was a volunteer effort in a 1,000 square foot office. Now it's a 20,000 square foot office with over 50 employees and 50 volunteers. And the most important thing is the intergroup relationship that we have with all the community members. I can't even explain to you, all my volunteers, they come from churches, from synagogues, from mosques, and they just come together just to help the community. It is a blessing. And during the coronavirus, I can't even tell you. I mean, we actually were able to distribute 25 million pounds of food. 25 million pounds of food. And last year, again, God bless to you guys and the Jewish community and the other community members. UJA through Met Council donated over, I don't know how many, it was like skids. When I say skids, it's like, 2 pallets of dates during month of Ramadan, which was so important for, and showing that built up relationship and how we work together, even times of need, even times of, such distress. And that's the most beautiful thing that we can say, that happens here.
Yeah, well, that's quite a story, and it's an inspiration. Talk about inspirations. Both of you are an inspiration for us in the work that you are doing. And speaking of inspirations, maybe more surprises. You mentioned just in passing, and in response to my first question about tasting falafel in Israel, and probably some of our viewers are saying, in Israel? What is Mohammed Razvi, the Pakistani American, doing in Israel? And I've had the pleasure of traveling with you once to Israel. My colleague whom you mentioned, or by Bob Kaplan, has traveled with you several times to Israel. So I'm going to ask you why were you there? And what were some of the more memorable moments from those trips that have really impacted both our work here as well as our work in your work in that region?
Well, the most important thing was traveling with you and JCRC and on the first trip. The first trip was amazing because it gave me a chance to also, visit history of what I always read about, always seen, and, to seeing the unity where possibilities are, where members of the Jewish community, the Muslim community are alongside in that Temple Mount, in that neighborhood, in those areas, how they are living side by side. And really, some people mention, oh, there's so many these issues and so many fights, but you guys are working at it and everyone's working at it. I think that was very beautiful. And then, on behalf of the Embassy of Israel through the US, with those trips that I went with Rabbi Bob Kaplan, were so inspirational. And also we were teaching them how we get along in New York and how we work together. Just as an example, you've heard of Halal Meals on Wheels. It was an initiative because it started because I went to Israel and I basically was talking about how Jewish community, Muslim community, Christian communities work together here. And I was talking with Bob and I said, Bob, he introduced me to a wonderful person. Her name is Leah from JASA, Jewish Association for the Aged, I think it's called. And I started talking to her and I said, I really want to try the Halal Meals on Wheels program. And I was just talking to her about Israel, then I talked to her about the meals program. And all of a sudden, a few years later, and literally we're still in partnership with JASA, working with the Meals on Wheels program for the Muslims. And that's what I talk about. And that's what Bob and I, always explain to everyone. It's not easy, but we work at it. I mean, everyone thinks, oh, in New York or in America, everyone gets along and everything is hunky-dunky. No, it's not. As Daisy's mentioning, like, there are these white supremacists that we have to understand, that we have to really look into, not to, say all white people are bad, but, there are a handful, and we need to focus, and we need to realize that we can't just paint everything with one brush stroke. But the important thing is the relationships as we do travel, work together, especially whether it's in Israel and whether it's coming back to New York, it really disseminates the way we can work together. It shows it's a possibility. And it's an example. I mean, I never seen halal Meals on Wheels, and we're being told that halal Meals on Wheels does not exist in other states. It only exists in New York.
Really?
It only exists in New York. And it's due to the fact I went to Israel, got a chance to meet with Leah from JASA, with Bob, and it just moved forward towards there.
It's a real credit to you, of course, to my colleague, Rabbi Bob Kaplan, that this was instituted, and to our colleagues over at JASA. Catherine Haslinger, who is the CEO of JASA, was actually on Community Relations Corner a number of episodes ago. And it's really wonderful to see that partnership between COPO and JASA. I want to turn back. So thank you for that, Mohammed. I want to turn back to Daisy. You referenced your having grown up in Kashmir. What do you see as the major differences between your experiences here in America versus what you experienced growing up?
Well, so I think that when I came to America, I was a little surprised at how there was not that level of interaction between different religions. Everybody was somewhat siloed, or at least I was not aware of it. But when I began to do my own personal outreach work, and Michael, you were one of the first Jewish leaders. Do you remember those little dinners we used to have?
Remember those days?
Remember the dinners? I remember that dinner that I hosted in our little office, and I think it was you and Bob and Michael Paley and Muzaffar Chisti and like 10 people. And I remember when you walked in, you looked at my dinner and you said, "Oh, nice." And it was salmon and beans. And, I had Caroline Katz had given me advice on what to order. And you said, "Is it kosher?" I said, yeah, of course it's kosher. It's salmon, it's beans, string beans. And then you said, "Where'd you order it from?" And I said, I ordered it from a very fancy place. And you said, "Okay, it's not from a kosher place." And I said, "No." And then I remember how we went into the kitchen. And you remember that very profound moment. And I don't know if you have this memory, but I couldn't find anything there. There was an orange, and you said an orange was okay because it was not peeled. And then you said, "What do you have in the fridge?" And then I had matzah, because I used to love eating matzah, because I grew up with all these Jews and matzah and matzah ball. And then I opened the fridge, and there were these two little jars. It was called Moishes and Ali's, and it was from Daniel Lebetsky, had started a factory where he had hired Palestinians and to make what was it? I think it was like olive paste, and they were unopened. And you said, "Oh, they're unopened, so let's eat that." I have never forgotten that story of how I actually learned about what kosher was, and we got a real education. So some of these relations have evolved significantly, from what they were to what they are today. And today, I sit on the advisory board of National Advisory Board of Muslim Jewish Advisory Council. And you've heard that, that they've just passed legislation. The Senate passed the Jabara Hayar No Act Hate.
Yes.
And it's amazing that it happened. But I think it was because people were so surprised to see Jews and Muslims together. I remember Chuck Schumer said, two of you are here together? This is amazing. He was so, he didn't know what to do with us.
Right.
And I think that it shows that when we come together, especially on issues that really affect our community, that we can really create a change. It breaks my heart to see what's happening in Kashmir, in India, where, you know, it seems as though they're going in the opposite direction. You know, they're going in the direction of deep polarization, and, you know, where the supremacy, Hindu supremacy is rising now. And it is, now I wish that they would model some of the things that we're doing here. I wish I could just go and say, let's go, Mo, you, me, and a bunch of us who know how to do this, who know how to bring people together, can do this. But you know, I don't know if it's possible. So I've learned that at the substrate, even if you have religious tolerance, it can break down very quickly. And it can break down very quickly if you have people in positions of power who are stoking that. And we've seen that in this country, right? Here we have a country that is celebrated for its diversity, celebrated for its kind of constitution, which regards all human beings as equal. And you saw what happened with the Trump administration and how it was undermined. All of that was undermined because you had certain people in positions of power that had the ability to stoke that feeling of distrust or this thing. So it's a very delicate thing. And this fabric can come apart very quickly. And so,
speaking about how delicate matters are and steering away from politics as opposed to community, how has your work now changed because of the pandemic? Have you seen an alteration in your pattern of activity in the organizations that you're involved in? How has the pandemic affected you, Daisy, in the work that you're doing? And I'll turn it over to Mo afterwards.
yeah, well, the pandemic has been a blessing for me personally because it has allowed me to do a lot of the research and publish two books simultaneously in 2 years, you know, one on white supremacy and one on 30 rights of Muslim women. But what is interesting about this is the potential of what we can do now and how many people we can reach online, just like we're doing right now,
Yes.
right? And Mohammed is in Pakistan, we're here in New York, but we can communicate. So we went online immediately after the pandemic, literally at the very start of the pandemic, we started. And so some of the outreach work that we would have done, Michael, traditionally, like, you know, I would do a town hall and I would go and I would travel far distances. That I think is going to be behind us now. We might do a couple of touch point events here and there, but really a lot of the educational outreach work that I'm doing, particularly creating awareness, changing hearts and minds, some of that can be done online. So for instance, in Afghanistan, you know that US is retreating. And to our shock, to our horror, Taliban is coming back to power, the very people that we were supposed to defeat. And they have no regard for women. They've already said women can only go to school until 5th grade, and women can only venture out with their husbands and their sons or their guardians. So basically, keep the woman inside the home and keep her dumb and stupid and, you know, don't educate her. So you can imagine what's going to happen there. And so now I'm publishing this book on 30 rights of Muslim women, primarily to address this issue of women's rights, you know, the Quranic rights of Muslim women. What does the Quran say? What did the Prophet say? What does Islamic jurisprudence say? So instead of having to travel to Afghanistan and, you know, take my body over there in dangerous circumstances, I was able to train 90 top women there on a Zoom session. And they were all sitting at the kitchen tables in their living rooms, just like Mohammed is right now, listening in. And so we have to take advantage of technology to be able to create the good that we want to do in the world, and not resort to necessarily, not see this as an impediment, to see this as an opportunity.
Yeah, well, thank you for that and for the work that you are doing. It's just extraordinary that you were able to communicate with 90 women in Afghanistan. We know the misogynist direction of the Taliban, and so I truly, I'm sure we all commend you for what you have done in that regard. And I also know, speaking of commendations of what Mohammed has done, he mentioned it earlier with regard to food insecurity. So what is it like, Mohammed, with regard to that matter and other matters during this COVID pandemic that has really changed within COPO? What's your day pretty much like, considering all the challenges that you're currently facing, serving the community that you do?
Well, the most important thing, I mean, like I was mentioning earlier, as we, when the pandemic hit, right, in March, we actually were only servicing about 60 families per week for food. And then when everything got locked down, all of a sudden it went up to almost 1,000 families per week. Then it jumped to 2,000 families per week. At the moment, the rate that we are in is 15,000 families per week who are able to serve through our partners and the people who wait on our lines. We converted, I mean, I literally had to convert my 2 pre-K centers, which were closed down because of DOE, into a food pantry. I bought freezers and fridges. And then I also, because of my senior center, which was running at that time, and then I had to close that down, I converted that into a food pantry section also. And my 10,000 square foot backyard, which literally was, it was like a place where we had the kids to enjoy, play games, that turned into a whole warehouse. So at the moment, because of this pandemic, there are 2 things that are happening. One is I never realized that many people need food in America, first of all, or even in my neighborhood. But more importantly, I found out more and more churches and some of the mosques and some of the other community organizers, including a Jewish community group, which is called the Bridge, a wonderful, wonderful organization that works with us and also works with the Jewish community. They needed food. And I'm like, now we have about 70 organizations that actually every week they come by, they need food. And if they don't have a convenience or getting a vehicle or something, then we actually drop it off to them. To the church, we drop it off. We even drop it off to Matthew Eugene's office, our city council member, just so he can have food, so he can distribute it in his neighborhood. But it's not ending. I see it more and more that more people need help, even if these stimulus checks come. That's the other thing we realized. The checks did not go to other people because they're not eligible, because they're in the middle of their documentation paperwork. So we actually worked with Catholic Charities and raised they gave us about $350,000 and we redistributed to the community members. But it's not stopping. It's not stopping. People still need help. And I mean, I realize it now more and more. It's going to take at least 2 years or 3 years, maybe more, just to try to get back in normal, trying to normalize everything. But it's not looking good at the moment. And especially when we're hearing this new wave coming in and the third wave, that really, really stresses out the people. The mental health stress is unbelievable. Yeah. It is and I mean, my office, Asma Nadi, she's the one who actually is doing it all the time pro bono to helping all these community members who are just stressed out. They are just so stressed out. We're just trying to figure out how to help all of them.
Well, we really thank both of you for the exceptional work that you are both doing internal to your own communities. And now let's talk about relationship building, particularly between the Muslim and Jewish communities. How have you seen an evolution of that relationship since 9/11? Mohammed, you referenced 9/11 in your earlier comments. What has our relationship looked like, and where are we today in terms of that relationship? Daisy?
I think that, when we started our relationship building, I remember that was a moment when we really needed to build trust. We didn't even know each other. And those intimate dinners that we started with, I know many people that do Jewish Muslim dialogue right now. And I tell them, I said, if you can trace back, this all started at dinner tables where we were having difficult conversations, if you remember correctly. And we always made a deliberate attempt to keep Israel and Palestine out of the picture because we knew that if that was brought in, that it would affect, our ability to build that trust. So I think that was a good strategy in the beginning. Over time, we went from building trust to becoming friends, where we were defending one another. If you remember correctly, that moment with that court of a house controversy that was like a tsunami for us. And in that tsunami, I remember how many of our friends came to our aid at that time. It was really important because we knew somebody had our back. And everything from Joy Levitt to all of you. I remember that check that was given to me in Sukkot, under the Sukkot tent, a small check, but a really symbolic, very important check saying, we know you guys need money right now. And I realized at that time that we are two communities that are very different than most other minority communities because we are religious communities. We are roughly the same size, and we are two minority religions that bookend the big religion in the middle, right? So you have Judaism on one side, Islam on the other, and then you have Christianity in the middle. And we are under attack by a common enemy right now in this country. And so all that relationship building that we have done, the trust, the relationship building, the collaboration, now has to result in something else. And that is what I think that MJAC, Muslim Jewish Advisory Council, is working on, to protect our two communities from, not receiving our fair share as Americans. And I think that the legislative piece is where a lot of the work needs to emphasize that, because that's where our community is at. There's the potential to strip us of these rights. So I see a great evolution in this community building. It's almost like a model of how to do community relations work, and we should write about it. Michael, I really think it should be written because it's almost like a case study, and it could be used in other places, other conflict zones. I'm not talking about seeds of peace kind of a thing, which is more like dialogue. I'm talking about how do you take two communities at institutional levels and bring them to see what we have in common, but also how to work towards a common purpose. And that is it is my hope that at some point we might, when we have matured enough and we don't fear taking on more bigger issues, that perhaps maybe we can even help the Israel-Palestine situation with the kind of knowledge that we have and the kind of trust that we have. Like Mohammed was saying, he went to Israel, he met people. There's a lot of sharing that can be done, but I think that's like the next decade.
Well, I think thank you. And Mohammed certainly has been in that space. But Daisy brought up the point, Mohammed. Let's drive it home a little further. What can we do? We meaning leadership in the Muslim community, leadership in the Jewish community, to make sure that the tensions in the Middle East are not imported or exported from there here into New York, to keep them off of the streets of New York, to focus on our relationship here as opposed to the conflicts over there.
Well, this brings me to one of the programs which actually, which is led by you guys, by JCRC, which started after 9/11. Myself with COPO and JCRC, which was We Are All Brooklyn at that time.
Right.
Because there was conflicts that were happening outside the country. We really did not want it to affect us. And I was just learning about the Jewish community. And I remember till today even that, when I went to this FBI meeting, they showed me the study of hate crimes, an FBI book, which showed that the highest hate crimes that were happening was against the Jewish community in prior years. And I was like, oh my God. And then, I started to realize more and more that, like as Daisy's mentioning, we are more similar and we are minority and we have to work together. But, it also brings me back to my childhood. I remember, there was a bar mitzvah, a friend of mine. I remember, Michael, I was telling you, Howie Golden. And I was like, and Howie's like, I'm going to have a bar mitzvah. I'm like, sure, I would love to come. And his dad was writing my name on the card for the invite. And he goes to Howie, you sure you want to invite Mohammed, Razvi? And I was like, yeah, he's my friend. I want him. And then I remember when I showed it to my mom, and she goes, you sure you want to go to a bar mitzvah, with Howie Golden? I said, yeah, he's my friend. And I was like, I had the most amazing time and I enjoyed it. I loved it, everything. And then as I'm growing older and I'm like realizing, oh my God, I really, because when we're growing, you're not born to look at the differences. You just play together. It's these things that you pick up along the way or along the things that you hear. And as I was mentioning, when we went to Israel, and I remember it still today, in Akko, there was a huge, huge fight that happened because I think it was during Yom Kippur.
Yes.
The Muslim group was actually making some noise and they thought it was celebrating or something. There was a fight. Yeah. And, the Israeli embassy requested, through JCRC, Bob Kaplan and Mohammed to come and show them how do we get along. I'm like, Bob, it's my pleasure, And basically, Bob and I just told him, hey, it's about how to change that street lamp inside your street corner so your daughter and my daughter can cross the street safely. How do we talk to the education department so your daughter and my daughter can get the best education? Because we're in the same place. I remember there was an imam and a chief rabbi. They were not happy to be there, but they had to be there because it was through the embassy. And when they sat together, they were like, we're not going to sit. We're going to sit at the other end of the corner. They sat in the huge auditorium. Bob and I talked to them. Then we through the translations, because I don't speak Arabic. Well, Bob is good with Yiddish. That's true, though. Bob spoke directly, I think, at that time. And we were just talking to them that, look, I know your community. And Bob was mentioning, we know your community is, it has a cough. It's not doing too well. But how are you going to fix it? One doctor, like if I'm the doctor, I'm going to say, oh, give him cough syrup. Bob's like, if I'm the doctor, I'm going to give him NyQuil or something else. It's like, but you both are doctors of your community. But how do you fix this? Rabbi Miller, at that moment, it was the first time they shook hands and took a picture. And when Bob and I went back to Akko just for another visit to another group, we went to Akko. We found out that the Jewish chief rabbi actually did a sermon during the month of Ramadan, at the end of the month of Ramadan, during Eid al-Fitr, which was never heard of. Yeah. Until today, any conflict that happens, they talk about it. They talk to each other to make sure, hey, is it really, this is what's happening? They're not celebrating during Yom Kippur. It was just somebody's birthday or something. So, they're taking these steps. And, God bless. That's all it takes.
Right. And I just want to make sure that our viewers understand that that trip was sponsored by the United States Department of State, by the American State Department, and by the American Embassy, who knew of the work that Bob and Mohammed were doing and brought them in, parachuted them into some tense zones in Israel where Arabs and Jews were living side by side, but there wasn't any communication. And to your great credit once again, and our colleague Bob, so much has been accomplished. I want to turn it, so thank you for that. I want to turn it back to Daisy and thank her for helping us develop our Women in Faith program. In what way are women particularly pivotal in building and maintaining these relationships and representing our communities? And once again, on behalf of our Women in Faith Coalition, thank you so much for your pivotal work there.
Yeah, I remember when we started the Jewish-Muslim dialogue, it was literally started with Caroline and I having these deep conversations. So two women coming together, like she would always say, we're conspiring together to bring all these men together because, you were the leaders of the communities and we needed to bring all of you together. And the two of us knew that we had to start at the dinner table at a very simple conversation levels. So we would get to know each other, like ta'aruf, get to know one another. So I think that's what women do really well. They are good at building consensus because they are the glue of the family. They are the glue of the community. And ultimately, when a woman comes apart, society comes apart. So a woman is central to the family and maintaining peace within the family. And when I say family unit, I mean a family can be extended to community. And so we have this vantage point that generally, men don't have this third vantage point, and we have this ability to work across the aisles. We're not afraid to work across the aisles and reach out. And I'm not making a generalization. I'm saying this is the strength that women have. So on women's issues, we need the men folk to support us. Without the men supporting our work, we're not going to go as far as we can. So this book that I'm publishing, 30 Rights of Muslim Women, it's my way of once and for all, putting together a document where people can reach in and say, okay, this is something that is really easy to understand. This is something that I fundamentally now understand, that women have had these rights since their birth. And these are not rights that are state given. These are rights that are God given, and inspire women to take action within their own locales in the way that is unique to them. So this is something that I know is happening in the Jewish community as well, in a very significant way. I know people that are the Orthodox women who are struggling with some similar things. And so the more of us that do this work, that come forward and talk about faith and activism in such a way that is profound to the conversation that's happening around the world, but also that is transformative within the community itself, the more I think we will be able to have an impact on society in general.
Well, we certainly hope that you'll be successful in those efforts, and I'm sure that through the interfaith opportunities that are presenting themselves will provide more latitude for women in particular to move forward within leadership roles. We certainly respected the president of the Jewish Community Relations Council, JCRC, is Cheryl Fishbein, a very proud woman, but also an extraordinarily effective leader. Let's just wrap up with one general question about how you see, both of you see, the future of the Muslim community, most especially here in New York. Are you optimistic in terms of the direction that it's going to be taking based on the leadership roles that you and your colleagues have played? We'll start with Mohammed, and we'll then turn to Daisy.
Well, look, the most important thing, Michael, what I've learned, and I've learned tremendously from the Jewish community, is that we need to get the next generation ready. And, as we sit together on like, for example, with Youth Bridge, where we're getting these young folks and young leaders, the next generation, to work together, to understand, and, to also look at how to address if there's conflicts, address when there's disaster, work together as a team. I feel, and I know for a fact now, that we have many youth, Muslim youths, who are working within the system, who want to partake into the system. And that's what I focus on. I mean, one of the biggest things, what I was doing was the FBI Youth Career Day with the FBI. I mean, I'm so happy, I can tell you that, there's over and also with other city agencies, with the NYPD, there's over 1,200 Muslim police officers. There's over 300 FBI agents, and they're understanding they need to work with the system. And my kids, my grandkids, yes, I have grandkids, believe it or not, but my kids and my grandkids are gonna stay here in New York. I'm just here visiting in Pakistan. I'm still going back to New York. I'm still an American. My kids are American. They're American Muslims. They're going to live there. They need to know the system, and they're getting into it. They're understanding it. And the Muslim leadership, the new generations, they're understanding it. They're being in politics. They need to get involved. and, not be involved in third world politics. I mean, my uncles, they still fight in, they're still thinking about, oh, what's happening in Pakistan. Meanwhile, some of them are living in, USA. It happens. But I see a great future, and the relationships that have been built through JCRC, through COPO, through Daisy, through all of us working together, it's going to go a long way. I look forward to it.
Thank you, Mohammed. Daisy, are you equally as optimistic?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic because, first of all, the global Muslim community is represented here in New York. We have every shade, every ethnicity, every nationality, every ideology is all here, and somehow we seem to be working through it. But what's interesting is that Muslim women particularly are involved in every sector of society right now. So from politics, we have seen at least 15 people that have been elected, nominated in politics. In religion, women are taking a very important role within their communities as leaders, as spokespeople, as, inspirers, whatever you want to call it. In economy, women are actually in economy. I mean, Biden actually has, one of his top cabinet people is a Muslim woman. And she's basically in charge of the economy. In science, we have women in science. We have, doctors, we have scientists, we have astronauts, we have women in the arts. So Muslims in general, but Muslim women specifically, if I'm focusing on just the Muslim woman, is actually thriving in this country. I mean, despite all the interruptions and the discrimination and the undermining of people, I think that's an interruption. It's a small little issue that has happened to every faith community before. This, Michael, the Jewish community, the challenge of integration and the challenge of acceptance is an American problem. But once you get accepted as a community, then you flourish as that community. So we're going through that period of, are we going to accept them or never going to accept them? But whether you accept us or not, we've integrated already, and we're making great strides because we're an educated community. We are a community that Absolutely. Even if we're uneducated, we have somebody who's educated that we aspire to be educated. So the next batch that's coming in that's not as educated is looking up to the higher educated people and say, I want to be there and I want to be there. So we have a lot of role models in this community that people can model themselves after.
And both of you have educated us so intensely over the course of this past hour. The time has flown by, and unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up this conversation. Look forward to having another opportunity down the road to have another conversation on Community Relations Corner. What a pleasure it has been to have Daisy Khan and Mohammed Razvi on Community Relations Corner. Before I offer some greetings for your special holiday, are there last few words that you'd like to share with us before we sign off, Daisy?
No, I'm just amazed at how you did all this in 1 hour.
Yeah.
Amazing, great art. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Welcome, Mohammed.
So my thing is just this: during month of Ramadan, because we're at dinner tables, children are not born to hate. It's what they pick up at dinner tables, at conversations, and we need to make sure we nurture them and give them the right guidance. That's it. Thank you.
Amen. Amen to that. And I want to wish both of you and anyone who is viewing this program who is of the Islamic faith a Ramadan Karim, a Ramadan Mubarak. And I hope that this is the middle of the month. Again, knowing the Jewish calendar, I know that in our calendar is the 15th of the month, the lunar month. So there's still half of a month to go in terms of your fasting, as well as your studying and your praying. And we wish that all the positive things that you are praying for come to fruition, come to reality. And one of them is having both of you on this program. Thank you very, very much. Shalom to all, and look forward to seeing you. Salam to all as well, and look forward to seeing you again on Community Relations Corner. Bye-bye, and thank you to Mohammed and to Daisy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Shalom.